Long before maps had clean edges and long before oceans had names that people agreed upon, human beings moved slowly across the world without knowing they were making history. They did not call themselves explorers. They did not think of borders or continents or discoveries. They were simply families, tribes, small groups following the quiet logic of survival, following animals, seasons, warmth, and water. The land guided them. The sky guided them. The rhythm of the earth guided them. During the cold ages, when much of the world was covered in ice and snow, the oceans were lower than they are today. Between what we now call Asia and North America, there was once a wide stretch of land. It was not a bridge in the way people imagine bridges today. It was a broad, open region of grasslands, rivers, and frozen soil. Animals crossed it slowly. Humans followed, step by step, generation by generation. No one woke up one morning and decided to move to a new continent. They simply kept walking the same way their parents had walked, and their parents before them. These early people carried knowledge in their memories rather than in books. They knew how to read animal tracks in snow and dirt. They knew which plants healed and which harmed. They understood the language of wind and clouds. Children learned by watching elders. Stories were told by firelight, passed from voice to voice, shaped by time and repetition. The land itself became part of who they were. Over thousands of years, people spread farther south and east. Forests opened into plains. Plains rose into mountains. Rivers cut deep paths through stone. People adapted. Some became hunters of large animals. Some learned to fish coastlines and rivers. Others settled and farmed, slowly shaping the land while respecting its power. They built communities, trade routes, spiritual traditions, and complex societies. They named the stars. They measured time by the sun and the moon. They did all of this without ever knowing they lived on a continent that would one day be called America. Much later, far across the ocean, other civilizations were growing. In Europe, people believed they understood the shape of the world, but their knowledge was incomplete. Maps ended abruptly. The ocean beyond was filled with fear and imagination. Many believed that nothing existed past a certain point, that ships would fall into endless water, or that monsters waited beyond the horizon. Yet curiosity has always been stronger than fear. When Christopher Columbus sailed west in 1492, he did not believe he was heading toward an unknown continent. He believed he would reach Asia by crossing the ocean. This belief shaped everything about his journey. The ships were small. The crews were uncertain. The voyage was long and exhausting. Days blurred into nights as the sea stretched endlessly in every direction. The sailors grew anxious. Some lost hope. Some prayed. Some simply stared at the horizon, waiting for something to change. When land finally appeared, it was not empty. There were people there. They had been there for thousands of years. They lived in villages, towns, and cities. They spoke many languages. They had laws, traditions, beliefs, and systems of governance. They understood the land in ways the newcomers could not. They did not see themselves as living in a new world. This was their world. It always had been. The meeting of these two worlds was quiet at first. Curiosity met curiosity. But beneath the calm surface, misunderstanding began to grow. Each side saw the other through unfamiliar eyes. Words failed. Assumptions replaced understanding. What followed would change the course of history forever. As the first Europeans stepped onto the shores of lands they did not understand, the air itself felt different to them. The light fell across forests that seemed endless. Trees stood taller than anything they had known. Rivers moved with a quiet authority, carving paths through valleys that had existed long before any ship touched the sea. To the people who already lived there, this land was not mysterious. It was familiar. It was home. Every hill carried memory. Every river bend carried story. These were not empty spaces waiting to be filled. They were places already alive with meaning. Indigenous societies across the continent lived in balance with the environments around them. In the north, people adapted to cold winds and long winters, building shelter from wood, stone, and earth. Along the coasts, communities followed the rhythm of tides and seasons, fishing and trading along vast shorelines. In the plains, people moved with the great herds, understanding migration patterns so deeply that their lives flowed in harmony with the animals they depended on. Farther south, complex civilizations rose, building cities, roads, and systems of agriculture that fed millions. Corn, beans, squash, and countless other crops were cultivated with knowledge refined over generations. These societies were not frozen in time. They changed, adapted, debated, celebrated, and mourned. They formed alliances and sometimes fought wars. They created art, music, and ceremony. They observed the sky and built calendars that aligned with the movement of the sun and stars. Their histories were not written in ink but carried in spoken word, in songs, in carvings, in woven patterns. Memory itself was a living thing. When European explorers arrived, they brought with them ideas shaped by distant lands. They believed land could be owned, claimed, divided, and sold. This idea alone created confusion. To many indigenous peoples, land was not something to be possessed. It was something to belong to, could not be owned any more than the wind or the rain could be owned. This difference in worldview quietly set the stage for conflict, even before weapons or armies became involved. As more ships arrived, the pace of change accelerated. Settlements were built, forests were cleared, paths became roads. Diseases traveled faster than any army ever could. Illnesses unknown to the people of the land spread silently, weakening communities long before they understood what was happening. Entire villages disappeared, not because of battle, but because of invisible forces carried across oceans. The land absorbed these losses in silence. Time moved forward anyway. Generations passed. New languages blended with old ones. Trade expanded. Stories changed. Some traditions survived by adapting. Others faded, remembered only in fragments. The continent continued to reshape itself under pressure from migration, ambition, and survival. People arrived not only from Europe, but later from Africa, Asia, and other parts of the world, each group carrying its own history, pain, hope, and memory. The idea of America slowly formed, not in a single moment, but over centuries of movement and struggle. It was never a simple story. It was layered and complex, filled with contradiction. Opportunity existed alongside loss. Innovation grew beside displacement. Freedom was spoken of even as it was denied to many. Yet through it all, human beings continued doing what they always have done. They built families. They told stories. They searched for meaning. The land itself remained patient. Mountains stood unmoved. Rivers continued their quiet journeys to the sea. Forests grew back where they were allowed to. The earth remembered everything, even when people forgot. Long after the names of explorers and kings faded from memory, the land still carried the footprints of those first travelers who crossed it without knowing where they were going. And now, much later, people lie awake at night beneath the same sky, breathing slowly, listening to stories about how it all began. The world feels large, and time feels deep. Thoughts drift, muscles loosen. The mind begins to rest, knowing that humanity's journey has always been long, slow, and guided by forces far older than worry or fear. The same stars that guided early travelers still move overhead, steady and calm, reminding anyone who looks up that they are part of a story much bigger than themselves. A story that continues quietly, one breath at a time. The night deepens as the story keeps moving forward, the way history itself has always moved, without urgency, without pause, simply flowing. After the early centuries of contact, The land that would one day be called America continued to absorb wave after wave of human movement. People arrived carrying languages that sounded unfamiliar to the forests and rivers. Yet those sounds slowly blended into the wind, becoming part of the landscape over time. Small settlements grew into towns, and towns stretched into cities. Paths carved by feet and animals widened into roads. Rivers became trade routes. Harbors filled with ships whose sails caught the same sun that once guided canoes and long journeys on foot. The land changed its appearance, but beneath the surface, its ancient rhythms remained. Seasons still turned. Winters still softened into spring. Crops rose and fell with the weather. No matter how much humans altered their surroundings, they could never fully escape the quiet authority of nature. Indigenous peoples endured through adaptation and resilience. Some were forced to move far from ancestral lands. Others found ways to preserve traditions in secret, passing language and ceremony quietly from parent to child. Even as pressures mounted, memory survived. Stories were whispered. Songs were sung softly. Knowledge hid within daily routines, waiting for the right moment to rise again. Survival itself became a form of resistance. Meanwhile, newcomers continued to arrive for many reasons. Some fled hunger. Some escaped war. Some chased opportunity. Some were brought against their will, torn from homelands across the ocean, forced into lives of labor and suffering. Their pain became woven into the soil as deeply as any other history. Fields were worked by hands that carried grief and endurance. Songs rose from exhaustion and hope, shaping music that would echo far into the future. Time pressed forward, indifferent and steady. Generations were born knowing only the land they stood on, even if their ancestors remembered another place. Children learned to walk beneath unfamiliar skies that soon became their own. Over time, identities blended, cultures intersected, traditions mixed and transformed. Food, language, music, and belief systems evolved into something entirely new, shaped by the collision and cooperation of countless lives. The idea of discovery faded, replaced by the reality of coexistence and conflict. People began to argue over governance, rights, and belonging. Documents were written, promises were made, some were kept, many were broken. Yet even in moments of tension and struggle, ordinary life continued quietly. People cooked meals. They laughed. They mourned. They rested beneath the stars after long days of work. The land watched it all without judgment. Rivers carried stories downstream, smoothing rough edges, wearing stone into softer forms. Mountains remained patient, offering perspective to those who climbed them. The wind moved freely across borders humans tried to draw, reminding everyone that nothing truly stays contained forever. Even cities, loud and crowded, settled into their own rhythms, breathing in daylight and exhaling silence at night. As centuries passed, the memory of how people first arrived slowly slipped into textbooks, museums, and bedtime stories. Yet the truth remained layered beneath simplified versions. Humanity did not appear suddenly. It arrived gradually, carefully, unknowingly, guided by survival and curiosity rather than conquest. Long before ships crossed the ocean, people already belonged to this land, shaping it gently, learning from it, honoring it in ways both visible and unseen. Now, as the story drifts onward, the pace slows even more. The weight of time becomes soothing rather than heavy. Knowing that humanity has endured ice ages, long migrations, loss, and renewal brings a quiet comfort. Worries shrink when placed against thousands of years. The breath steadies. The mind softens. The same land that welcomed the first travelers continues to hold everyone who rests upon it now. It does not rush. It does not demand. It simply remains, offering space to exist, to breathe, to sleep. And as the night grows quieter, history fades gently into the background, not as something finished, but as something ongoing, carrying each listener along in its calm, endless flow, like a river moving steadily toward the sea, unbothered by time, patient and at peace. The quiet flow continues, unbroken, the way a story meant for rest should move, never rushing, never stopping, just easing forward as time itself has always done. As the land settled into newer rhythms, people slowly began to understand that America was not a single place with a single beginning, but a living mosaic shaped by countless journeys layered over one another. Each step taken by earlier generations left a trace, even when those traces could no longer be seen. Long before borders were drawn on paper, the land connected people through rivers and trails. Waterways carried canoes, later boats, later ships, and always the soft reflection of the sky. Rivers became witnesses, watching children grow into elders, watching settlements rise and fade, watching languages shift in sound and meaning. The water never forgot. It moved forward, carrying memory without effort. As time went on, farming expanded across wide stretches of land. Fields opened beneath open skies, and seeds pressed into soil became promises of tomorrow. People learned patience through the earth. They learned that growth could not be rushed, that seasons demanded respect. Even those who believed they controlled the land eventually learned they were still subject to its rules. Drought reminded them of humility. Storms reminded them of balance. Abundance reminded them of gratitude, even when it was quietly felt rather than spoken. Communities formed around shared labor and shared rest. Markets appeared where goods and stories were exchanged together. Music drifted through evenings, shaped by many cultures blending into new sounds. Instruments carried echoes of distant homelands, yet the melodies slowly transformed, shaped by new experiences and new landscapes. Songs became a form of memory that did not need words to explain itself. Children grew up hearing fragments of stories about where their ancestors came from. Some stories were clear, others were vague, softened by time. Yet all of them pointed backward while life itself continued forward. Each generation stood between past and future, holding both without fully understanding either. This quiet balance became part of the human experience on the continent. The idea of America continued to evolve, not as a finished concept, but as an ongoing process. It expanded and contracted in meaning, shaped by who spoke and who listened. At times, it felt hopeful and open. At other times, it felt tense and uncertain. Through all of it, ordinary people continued to live their ordinary lives, which are often the most important stories of all. At night, lamps glowed softly in windows. Fires crackled low. Families gathered close to warmth. Outside, the land rested. Animals moved quietly. The stars traced the same paths they had always traced, indifferent to names and borders. The sky did not change for humans, yet humans continued to look up, seeking reassurance, direction, or simply beauty. Over long stretches of time, people began to reflect more deeply on the past. Questions emerged about who was here first, who belonged, and how history should be remembered. Some listened, some resisted. Truth surfaced slowly, the way dawn arrives without announcement. Understanding did not come all at once. It arrived gradually, through study, conversation, and the quiet persistence of memory passed down through generations that refused to forget. The land itself remained steady through these reflections. It did not demand agreement. It simply existed, holding all versions of history at once. Footprints overlapped. Old trails crossed new roads. Ancient settlements rested beneath modern cities, unseen but still present, like layers of earth beneath grass. As this realization settles in, the mind begins to relax even more. The weight of modern worry feels lighter when placed beside thousands of years of human endurance. The body understands that it belongs to something vast and continuous. Breathing slows, muscles loosen, thoughts drift gently, like leaves carried by a slow-moving stream. Human beings arrived here not in a single moment of discovery, but through patience, movement, and adaptation. They stayed through resilience, memory, and connection. And they continue now, living quietly within a story that never truly ends, only changes shape. The night listens, the land rests, and the story carries on, calm and steady, allowing the listener to drift deeper into rest, held gently by the long, unhurried rhythm of time itself. The story keeps moving, just as it always has, without edges or urgency, settling deeper into a calm, steady rhythm. As centuries unfolded, the land absorbed every footstep, every spoken word, every unspoken hope. Nothing truly disappeared. It simply became part of a larger memory, layered quietly beneath the present moment. People began to realize, slowly and often imperfectly, that history was not something distant or finished. It lived in names, in customs, in the way meals were prepared and stories were told. Even silence carried meaning. The absence of certain voices, the quiet where entire communities once stood, became part of the story too. The land held these absences gently, never announcing them, never demanding recognition, simply remembering. Across wide open spaces, wagons once rolled, then trains followed, and later roads stretched farther than anyone had imagined. Movement became faster, but the human need beneath it stayed the same. People searched for safety, for belonging, for a place where they could rest and build something lasting. Every journey, no matter how brief or long, echoed the first journeys made long before maps existed. The original inhabitants of the land continued to adapt, carrying their identities forward in ways that could survive change. Language sometimes softened into song. Ceremony sometimes became daily habit. Knowledge passed through hands, through repetition, through quiet instruction rather than written rule. Survival was no longer only about food and shelter. It became about memory and meaning. Nature continued its patient work. Forests reclaimed abandoned spaces. Grass grew where paths were forgotten. Animals returned when noise faded. The land healed itself whenever it was given the chance. This quiet resilience mirrored the resilience of the people who lived upon it, reminding them, even subconsciously, that renewal was always possible. As generations passed, people born on this land began to feel rooted, even if their ancestors once came from far away. The earth beneath their feet felt familiar. The sky overhead felt like home. Over time, the idea of being from somewhere else became less important than the experience of being here, now breathing, living, continuing. At night, when the world softened and noise fell away, the same sense of continuity could be felt. The mind, when allowed to slow, could sense the long line of humanity stretching backward and forward. Each individual life became a single note in a much larger melody, important not because it stood alone, but because it belonged. The story of how humans came to America was never about conquest alone, and never about discovery alone. It was about movement, adaptation, misunderstanding, resilience, and time. It was about people responding to the world around them, sometimes wisely, sometimes imperfectly, always human. As this understanding settles gently, the body responds naturally. Shoulders ease, breathing deepens. The mind stops trying to hold everything at once. History becomes less like a weight and more like a calm ocean beneath a floating boat, steady and supportive. The land remains beneath it all, unchanged in its essence, continuing to hold every listener just as it held the first travelers who arrived without knowing where they were going. Time stretches on, soft and endless, and the story flows with it, carrying the listener toward rest, toward stillness, toward the quiet comfort of knowing that they are part of something ancient, ongoing, and peacefully incomplete. The flow continues, gentle and unbroken, like a long breath taken without effort. As time moved forward, people began to sense that the land itself was a teacher. It did not speak in words, yet it offered lessons through repetition. When people listened, life felt balanced. When they ignored those lessons, the land responded in its own quiet ways, reminding everyone that nothing exists in isolation. Across generations, families passed down habits without always knowing where they began. The way bread was prepared, the way hands rested while working, the way elders were listened to at the end of the day. These small routines carried echoes of distant ancestors, some who crossed frozen ground long ago, others who crossed oceans later, all connected by the simple act of continuing. The memory of the earliest peoples never fully vanished, even when it was pushed aside. It lingered in place names, in pathways that followed ancient trails, in farming methods that worked with the land instead of against it. Even modern cities often rested on old foundations, their shapes subtly influenced by geography chosen long before stone and steel arrived. As centuries passed, people began writing more, recording their understanding of the past. Yet written history often moved faster than truth. Simplified what was complex. It named heroes and dates while overlooking the quiet lives that made survival possible. Still, even imperfect records helped future generations look backward and wonder, and that curiosity itself became a bridge between past and present. Children growing up on this land learned history not only in schools, but through experience. They learned it by walking through forests that had once been hunting grounds. They learned it by standing near rivers that once served as highways for trade and migration. Even without knowing the details, they felt the depth of time beneath their feet. The land never hurried them. Night after night, the same calm returned. Darkness softened sharp edges. Sounds faded into distance. The sky stretched wide and steady, offering perspective without explanation. People found comfort in routine, in repetition, in the understanding that tomorrow would arrive much like today, and today had been survived. As awareness slowly grew, people began to speak more openly about the many beginnings of America. Not one arrival, not one discovery, but many journeys layered over thousands of years. This understanding did not erase the past. It allowed it to breathe. It created space for truth without urgency, for reflection without judgment. The story became less about who arrived first and more about how people learned to live together, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, always learning. The land continued to provide the backdrop, steady and impartial, reminding everyone that time moves forward, whether it is acknowledged or not. In this realization, the mind finds rest. Worries feel smaller when placed beside centuries. Breathing becomes slow and even. Thoughts drift without needing direction. The body recognizes safety in continuity, in the knowledge that humanity has always faced uncertainty and always found ways to move through it. The same land that welcomed early travelers still holds everyone now, supporting each step, each pause, each moment of stillness. History flows quietly beneath the surface of the present, like deep water beneath calm waves. And as the night deepens further, the story does not end. It simply continues, steady and patient, carrying the listener gently towards sleep, wrapped in the long, reassuring rhythm of time itself. The quiet carries on, unbroken, as if the story itself has learned how to breathe. Time stretches gently, no longer measured in years or centuries, but in the steady rhythm of existence. The land remains constant, offering a sense of grounding that asks nothing in return. People continued to wake each morning to familiar skies, even as the world around them slowly shifted. Some changes were noticed immediately, others unfolded so gradually they felt invisible. New generations inherited a landscape already shaped by countless hands, yet still vast enough to feel endless. Hills held the warmth of the sun. Valleys collected mist in the early hours. Forests whispered softly as wind passed through leaves, the same sound that had soothed travelers long before roads existed. The understanding of America matured quietly. It became less of a destination and more of a shared space, shaped by many stories overlapping rather than one story replacing another. Memory began to feel less like a competition and more like a gathering, where each voice added depth rather than conflict. This shift did not happen all at once. It moved slowly the way wisdom often does. People learned that the past does not vanish simply because it is uncomfortable. It waits patiently, ready to be acknowledged when the time feels right. When listened to, it offers clarity. When ignored, it lingers quietly, shaping outcomes in subtle ways. The land itself modeled this patience, holding everything without preference. Daily life continued in simple, grounding ways. Hands worked soil. Feet followed familiar paths. Conversations rose and fell like gentle waves. Even moments of struggle were softened by routine, by the knowledge that others had endured before and would endure again. This continuity offered comfort, especially in uncertain times. At night, when the world grew still, the sense of connection deepened. People lying awake could feel that they were not alone in their thoughts. Others, long ago, had stared at the same stars, wondering about their place in the vastness. That shared experience crossed centuries without effort, linking one quiet moment to another. The story of how humans came to this land slowly became less about arrival and more about presence. Being here, staying, learning, adapting, respecting what came before while still moving forward. The land asked only awareness, not perfection. As this realization settles in, the body naturally relaxes. There is nothing to solve, nothing to prove. The long arc of human history reminds the mind that it is allowed to rest. Survival has already been practiced for thousands of years. Tomorrow does not need to be rushed into. The land continues to hold every story at once, without sorting or judgment. It supports the weight of memory and the lightness of the present equally. Beneath everything, it remains steady, offering rest simply by existing. And so the story flows onward, calm and continuous, like a river moving through night. It does not announce where it is going. It does not need to. It carries the listener gently, steadily, into stillness, into quiet, into sleep, held safely within the long and patient rhythm of time. The night deepens further, and the story flows on as softly as a river beneath moonlight, carrying every listener in its gentle current. Time itself seems to slow, stretching into vast spaces where moments are measured not by hours but by the steady rhythm of breath and heartbeat. The land beneath, the rivers, the forests, the hills, they all remain patient, offering a quiet stability that nothing else can replace. Human life continued to move across the continent in ways both small and profound. Families planted crops, cared for children, and built homes. Communities gathered to share food and stories. Every act, however ordinary, carried forward the echoes of those who had walked the land before, slowly shaping the present without anyone fully noticing. Paths made by footsteps hundreds of years ago became the routes for wagons, then roads, then bustling streets. Yet beneath them the memory of movement remained, silent and enduring. In this land, people learned lessons without needing formal instruction. They learned that patience is more powerful than haste, that cooperation often matters more than competition, and that living with the earth rather than against it leads to a quiet form of understanding. They understood, instinctively, that the seasons, the sun, and the wind all carried wisdom. By observing them carefully, they learned how to survive, how to thrive, and how to honor the continuity of life. Even as cities grew and technology advanced, the memory of the first travelers, the ones who crossed frozen plains, followed rivers, and adapted to forests, remained embedded in the land. Trails that had once guided canoes and small groups of humans evolved into streets and highways, carrying cars and buses, yet the rhythm of movement echoed the first journeys. This subtle continuity allowed the past and present to coexist peacefully, providing a calm reassurance to anyone who paused to notice. Over generations, people came to understand that history was not a single story but a vast collection of stories, layered one upon another. Each group that arrived, whether through migration, exploration, or circumstance, left its mark while learning from what had come before. Language, food, art, music, and traditions mingled in ways that were often imperceptible, yet profoundly shaping the culture of the land. The richness of the present grew directly from these countless threads woven together over centuries. The land itself seemed to breathe along with these changes. Rivers continued their patient journey to the sea. Forests slowly regenerated after clearing. Mountains remained steadfast and silent, offering perspective and quiet counsel. The wind carried stories between valleys and across plains, moving freely, reminding everyone that some things cannot be controlled, only respected. Nature's calm presence offered a constant, even when human life was loud, hurried, or chaotic. Night after night, the same sky appeared, unchanged in its vastness, offering a sense of permanence and reassurance. Stars traced familiar paths, visible to anyone willing to look, connecting those who came before to those lying awake in the present. By simply observing, one could feel the long line of human experience stretching backward and forward, endless and steady. Each person, each life, became a small part of a story much larger than themselves, carried forward without effort, just by existing. In these quiet hours, the mind softens, thoughts drift, muscles relax, the weight of worry diminishes. Awareness of centuries of endurance and adaptation offers comfort, allowing the body to feel safe and supported. The story of arrival, of survival, and of coexistence flows steadily, offering reassurance without urgency, reminding the listener that time itself is patient and life has always found a way to continue. And so, the story carries on, gentle and unhurried, like a river beneath the moonlight, guiding the listener further into calm, into stillness, into sleep, enveloped in the enduring, patient rhythm of the land and the long history of all who have moved across it. The night stretches on, quiet and endless, and the story drifts forward like a slow, steady current. Every moment of human presence, every footstep taken across the land, every breath drawn beneath the sky adds to the soft, persistent rhythm that flows through time. The land beneath, unchanged in essence, holds everything gently, offering an unspoken sense of stability to anyone willing to listen and rest. Life on this continent continued in both ordinary and remarkable ways. People built homes, planted gardens, tended animals, and raised children. Every action, no matter how small, carried forward knowledge and experience from countless generations before. The first travelers, who crossed ice and water long ago, remain present in the echo of every trail, every river path, every ridge and valley. Their journey was not hurried, and neither is the story itself. As communities grew, people discovered new ways to live together, to share resources, to cooperate, to build a sense of belonging. Social structures developed, traditions formed, and knowledge was passed quietly from one person to another. Music, storytelling, art, and ritual became the vessels of memory, carrying the past into the present without anyone needing to write it down. Songs hummed softly in homes. Fires crackled in evening gatherings. Stories unfolded slowly, becoming part of the rhythm of life. Nature itself remained a patient guide. Rivers continued flowing to the sea. Mountains stood unmoving, offering perspective and shelter. Forests whispered with wind through leaves. Animals moved silently along old paths. The land remembered everything, even the things humans had forgotten. Seasons came and went with predictability, teaching lessons about patience, resilience, and adaptation. People learned to notice these patterns, to move in harmony with them, rather than against them. As generations passed, Newcomers arrived from distant places, bringing languages, foods, and ideas that blended with what was already here. Some arrived seeking freedom. Some fled hardship. Some were forced to move. Each arrival left traces on the land, in culture, and in memory. The blending of these countless experiences shaped the continent slowly, gently, without abrupt change. Time allowed each layer to settle before the next one arrived. Night after night, as the sky darkened and stars appeared, people paused. The same constellations guided both the first travelers and their descendants. Looking upward offered a sense of continuity, a reminder that life's rhythm stretches far beyond any individual moment. Each life is small, yet part of a much larger flow, a line connecting past and future, woven seamlessly into the fabric of the land itself. Even when hardship came, storms, illness, conflict, loss, human beings continued to endure, adapt, and find ways to move forward. Daily routines offered comfort. Tending crops, caring for children, repairing homes, sharing food and conversation. In this continuity, the mind learned rest, the body found release, and the heart discovered quiet reassurance. Life itself became a soft, unbroken melody that carried every listener gently forward. The story, like the land, remains patient. It does not demand attention, and it does not require understanding. It simply exists, continuing quietly, holding space for all who arrive, for all who move, for all who breathe. And as this understanding settles in, the body softens further, the mind drifts more deeply, and the listener moves naturally into calm, into stillness, into the long, steady embrace of sleep, cradled in the enduring rhythm of history and the land itself. The story continues, unhurried, flowing like a river that has traveled countless miles yet moves without haste. The land itself remains patient, holding the weight of centuries, carrying the echoes of every life that has touched it. Each sunrise brings no sudden change, only gentle shifts, the slow unfolding of light across rivers, valleys, and forests, as if the earth itself breathes along with the people who live upon it. Human beings, moving through time, continued to follow the rhythms of the seasons. They planted, they harvested, they built, they rested. Every step taken, every structure raised, every story told became part of the silent fabric of the land. Children learned by observation, listening to elders, watching animals, feeling the soil between their fingers. Knowledge did not arrive in books at first, but in lived experience, passed quietly and deliberately, like a soft current beneath a calm surface. The first travelers who arrived thousands of years ago left footprints that would eventually be forgotten, but their influence remained in the way trails followed rivers and mountains guided movement. Later generations followed similar patterns, unknowingly tracing steps that had existed long before them. Each journey connected the past to the present, like threads woven into an invisible tapestry that stretched across the continent. Over time, communities discovered the importance of cooperation and shared responsibility. Families and villages worked together to build shelters, prepare food, and care for the young and elderly. Music, dance, and storytelling became vessels for memory, carrying wisdom and experience in ways that words alone could not capture. Songs were soft and lingering, stories patient, unfolding slowly so that every listener could absorb their meaning without urgency. Life itself became a form of storytelling, with each day contributing to the ongoing narrative of survival and continuity. Nature remained both teacher and companion. Rivers, forests, mountains, and plains moved according to their own rhythms, indifferent to human plans yet perfectly suited to guide those who observed carefully. Winters reminded people of endurance. Springs offered renewal. Summers provided abundance. Autumns called for reflection. By moving with these cycles, humans found a harmony that allowed them to thrive while still respecting the land. This rhythm became a quiet reassurance, a gentle reminder that life unfolds at its own pace, and that patience is essential. The arrival of new peoples brought change, blending cultures, languages, and traditions. Some came willingly, others forcibly. Every arrival left traces on the landscape, in the culture, and in the memory of those who already lived there. Even when conflict arose, life continued quietly, finding ways to endure, adapt, and grow. Over time, the land absorbed these changes, allowing coexistence, layering histories upon histories, each one present yet unobtrusive, like sediment in a slow-moving river. Nightfall brought rest, calm, and reflection. People paused, sensing the vastness of time and the continuity of existence. The stars traced familiar paths, connecting those awake in the present to those who had stared upward for generations. This awareness offered perspective and reassurance. Each life, though small in the vast scope of history, was significant simply by existing, by moving forward, by participating in the quiet rhythm of the land. And so, the story flows onward, endless and patient, guiding the listener towards stillness. It is a soft current, carrying the mind gently into rest, carrying the body into relaxation, carrying the spirit into calm. The land remains steady beneath it all. The rivers continue their quiet journey to the sea, and the history of countless lives supports the present moment. Sleep arrives naturally, cradled by the unhurried, enduring rhythm of human life and the patient, timeless land. The quiet continues, unbroken, stretching through time like a soft, endless current. The land rests beneath every step taken upon it, carrying with it the memory of centuries and the quiet presence of all who have lived there. Each hill, each river bend, each forest glade holds its own story, layered invisibly, waiting for anyone who will pause long enough to sense it. Generations moved forward slowly, learning from what came before. Children grew beneath the open sky, watching elders tend the land, care for the young, and teach the rhythms of daily life. Knowledge was absorbed not from words alone, but from observation, repetition, and quiet reflection. People learned patience as the seasons shifted, understanding that life cannot be forced. They learned to watch, to wait, to move in harmony with the patterns of nature. As villages grew into towns, and towns into cities, the land continued its steady work. Trails once used by travelers became streets. Rivers remained highways for trade and travel. Forests receded in some places, yet slowly reclaimed abandoned fields elsewhere. Mountains, unmoving, provided perspective. Their permanence offered reassurance to all who looked to them, reminding the mind that change is natural, but some things endure. New arrivals came, bringing languages, customs, and stories. Some were seeking opportunity, some fleeing hardship, some forced to leave their homelands. Every arrival added layers to the tapestry of the continent, weaving together old knowledge with new perspectives. Even in times of conflict or uncertainty, life continued quietly. Daily routines, preparing meals, tending animals, walking familiar paths, offered comfort and continuity. Nightfall brought calm and reflection. Fires burned low in homes, and the stars above traced the same paths that had guided travelers for millennia. Looking up at them, people could sense the continuity of time, the line that connects the first humans who walked this land to those alive today. Each breath became a reminder that life persists, that generations endure, and that the rhythm of existence is unbroken. Through centuries, lessons persisted without being written. Patience, observation, cooperation, and respect for the land. Humanity learned to endure hardships, celebrate abundance, and honor memory. Every individual life contributed to the ongoing story, whether noticed or not. Life itself became a soft, persistent melody, woven into the quiet music of the land. And as the night deepens, the mind grows still. The body relaxes, Thoughts drift like leaves on a slow river. The story carries the listener onward, gently, steadily, into rest. The land remains patient beneath it all. Rivers continue their quiet journey to the sea. The mountains stand unmoving, offering perspective. History flows quietly, endlessly, holding all who lie awake, cradling them in the unhurried, enduring rhythm of time itself, guiding them toward calm, toward stillness, toward sleep. Time continues to flow, carrying the echoes of every life, every journey, every quiet choice ever made upon this land. The first travelers, the families who crossed ice and rivers, the communities who built, taught, and preserved memory, all remain part of the slow, enduring rhythm. Even as cities rose and technology advanced, the land remembers them, quietly holding the weight of countless footsteps, the whispers of songs long sung, the lessons passed softly from one generation to the next. The people who arrived later, whether seeking freedom, safety, or opportunity, blended into this rhythm. Their stories intertwined with those who came before, creating a tapestry of resilience, adaptation, and hope. Even struggles, conflicts, and losses became part of this continuity, forming layers that shaped the present while leaving room for the future. Life continued, not as a single narrative of triumph or defeat, but as a persistent, patient unfolding, like the slow turning of the earth beneath the sky. The land itself remained steady. Rivers carried the memory of travel. Forests held secrets of survival. Mountains offered permanence and perspective, and plains echoed the steps of countless feet. Seasons continued their eternal cycle, teaching patience, renewal, and the inevitability of change. People learned to live with these rhythms, drawing comfort from the quiet constancy around them, discovering peace in the knowledge that life always moves forward, even when it feels slow or uncertain. Night after night, as the stars traced the same paths they had for thousands of years, the world grew calm. Each breath, each heartbeat, each thought became part of the gentle rhythm of existence. Those who lie awake can feel themselves connected to the long line of humanity, to the land itself, and to the enduring flow of time. The past is not gone. It flows quietly beneath the present. It is part of who we are, carrying lessons and comfort forward, holding space for reflection and rest. And now the mind grows still, the body softens, the worries of today fade into quiet background noise. The rhythm of the earth, the patience of the land, the long endurance of human life, all cradle the listener. Sleep comes naturally, carried by the gentle current of history, the calm heartbeat of the land, and the enduring pulse of life itself. The story does not truly end. It simply rests, as all things do, waiting to continue with the first light of tomorrow, with the next breath, with the next step, gently, quietly, patiently, endlessly. And in that stillness, the world is at peace, and so is the listener.